Satitvishavahaihi. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnehi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshaviryajatraha Sthirairangaihi Sushtuvagam Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitayadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vruttashavaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspati dadatu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, so the summary of what we saw yesterday. So this is what I do for last, I don't know, a few retreats. It's really good for you to go through, and I'm so glad you gave a talk on how to retain things. And I mean, while you were talking, I was really thinking about, I didn't know all these different details that you told me. But after listening to Swamiji, I would often ask myself what exactly he was trying to say, what was the main point, and how everything else connected to it, and how. So it's not like, oh, Swamiji says this, and then you just kind of listen and you think you understand. I think this active participation on your own part with yourself plays a very important role in deepening your understanding. Not only memorizing, but deepening your understanding. So it's very, very good, and I'm happy to learn it because actually I felt that I was doing it on my own, and that is really nice. So that was good. Okay, who will start? Andre will start. Okay, Andre. And then please all of you join in because, even though it may seem as though he's covering everything, it will be nice to kind of have your inputs also. Please.
Alright, so yesterday we got on the topic of the question or the inquiry, what is a spiritual person? And that brought about some questions as to negate the false notions that go around in the spiritual world that we pick up from different methodologies and looked at them in the light of the whole, the knowledge. And the 2 points that came through was number 1, detachment. Now, this word detachment remains uninvestigated until it actually is investigated, where we discover that the question is, what am I trying to detach from? Because what I'm trying to detach from, the one that's detaching from that which they're trying to detach from is of the same nature, the same order, mithya, which makes it possible for the detacher to detach from that which is being detached from. In other words, in other
He's
words,
repping now.
in other words, I need
Yeah.
the detacher needs the faculties of the body, mind, intellect, which are of what mitya, in order to say I'm trying to detach. So, and even if we look at, for example, the material world, like clothes and a whiteboard, things like this are created by, they're created by scientists, and they allow us, ironically, for example, the print, to print words on a page which we use then to inquire about our nature. So we cannot discard the world of mitya as something that is not useful, because we depend on it to discover our nature. Okay. And this,
very good.
okay.
No, it's very good. I think he's putting in his own words what he understands, and that's very nice. Very good.
And the second point was this nature of desire. Now, desire sort of fits in the same category, but there's two schools of Buddhism, and we talked about this in Mundaka Upanishad. They sort of permeated this realm that we need to quit desire, when it's actually the only point, the only way I was able to achieve or come to a point of saying I need to quit desire is because desire has led me to that point. So that means if we even look at the entire universe, there is nothing but desire, because Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are what the realm, they are that which represents creation, destruction, maintenance. So everything is desire, and desire causes the seeker to move on to the next step, to where they need to be. So it's actually our friend. And also the part about desire is that it actually belongs, it's a different order of reality. So therefore we cannot say negate desire, because desire doesn't even belong to Brahman. Okay. Even though paradoxically it does at the same time.
Okay, that last sentence you have to explain further. But
Okay.
for now, it's okay. Go ahead. Everything else is perfect. What is the last sentence you said?
Okay, so the last sentence was, I say this, so Satya Mitya. So we look at it from a dualistic point of view. Satya Mitya is there's two orders of reality, but there's only Brahman. So what I meant by the last statement is anything that's thought of, even the word desire, is of consciousness. So therefore I cannot say it's not part of the whole, because it is still of the whole. Is that clear? Okay. Okay, so then we moved on to two categories of spirituality. And the two categories were apratasya prakti, self-growth. And this is the category whereby something is not present right now. Therefore, I need to apply effort in order to develop something that is not present right now, right here. So this belongs to the realm of, was it 2/3 of the karmakanda, of the ritual, prayers and different forms of protocols to attain that which I'm trying to attain in the realm of dharma, artha, and kama. Okay. So, and we also said that fake it until you make it. Now this belongs to that category of self-growth. Because let's say that I want to develop some kind of skill in my job. Obviously, I will need to develop skills that are conducive for the best functioning of that job. So in that case, the fake it till you make it absolutely works. Okay. Now, ironically, this self-growth, apratasya prakti, leads to the maturity of the mind, which leads to, or the possibility for self-inquiry. For example, I would take a rough grindstone, it's a metaphor, and a rough grindstone is a metaphorical analogy for life. So, and we have a knife. The knife is an analogy for the mind, or the manas and the buddhi. So if I know through, that is the world, the karma kanda, if I know how to position the knife in such a way as to sharpen it against the vicissitudes of life, that is the grindstone, then what happens to my manas and buddhi? I sharpen it. So therefore I use life as a grindstone, which is the metaphor for life, and I use this to sharpen my instrument, which is then capable of inquiring in a much deeper level, which is category number 2, self-inquiry.
Yeah.
This is brilliant, Anna, what you're doing here. But it makes everybody else shut up.
No. I mean, as I said, please, everybody will say things. No, everybody will say
But you
things.
can't. at least I think, and I'm sure there are more people who think like that. Oh, I can never be as brilliant and as sharp as he is, so I better don't say anything. So the other, no? Well, for me, it's like this.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoy it too, but we know him. And he is fantastic. Yeah. He does a wonderful job. And we put our things after it.
Okay.
So what about everybody else? See, this intimidation also is something that one needs to work on. Because what happens is when somebody is shining, sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves and we say, no, we are not good enough, we are not good enough. And the whole emotional maturity is also to enjoy somebody shining. Wonderful. See, in all of this there is growth, because that little us begins to feel insecure with every stimuli that one receives, right? And we constantly compare ourselves with everybody else, and constantly we have this habit of feeling small, and we begin to feel uncomfortable. And I think really, when the teacher is brilliant, you enjoy it. So when somebody else is able to, also making an effort to really understand what is being said and make so much effort to put in their own words and not just repeating, I feel that we have to enjoy that whole process. Even though, in fact, when he says a few things, I feel that slight corrections are required in a few things. But I still very much enjoy what he's saying and his ability to kind of put together what all we saw in such an articulated, such a very, very nice way. So please don't think about it as somebody taking over. Yes, we can have little time restriction because the class time is important. But these are important points that you need to be reminded of before we proceed further. And so if you can little bit restrict the time, then that will be nice. Surya, you have
exactly
something to
this
say?
point. I think you have to give a space for everybody
Yes.
to intervene, so it means that he can speak, let's say, for 5 sentences, 10 sentences, or 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever. And everybody is allowed, let's say, to express also and complement and have their own, let's say, take and what they were, their own learning about yesterday. So it's not focused on one single individual, but we are a group, right?
Yeah. So what we did last time is in Rishikesh, what we did at that time was everybody else also participated. But after he finished, so this time if you feel that you don't agree with him or you want to say your own thing, is it okay if people just kind of raise your hands, and then maybe there is not only one person talking and there are many people talking. So we can do both ways, right?
Yeah.
So
I wanted to add something, because yesterday he showed us the way how to enrich our mind, and now this is a practical, it's a role model. We can all learn this. This is what I would say. Yeah, great. You, the first who is overnight.
yeah, come here.
And I would just like to add another point. It's not about expressing perfectly. It's also about digesting. You have to live what you teach. If you don't live it fully, then it's just an exercise of improving your memory. So, and this is an important point. Of course, it's important to remember stuff and to understand. Of course, it's important. But the second thing is to put it really to live it, to fully express it in every part of your life. This is like an important point. And for me, it's like every time I join the retreat, and I'm happy to listen to your teaching, I just understand more and more, because my subconsciousness is getting much more of the information, but I don't realize it. And it takes time unless I'm mature enough to really recognize it. So therefore, just relax yourself and give yourself the time to digest it. And if somebody's brilliant like Andrea, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, but I totally agree with Tobia. And what he's saying is, this is so true, Tobia, that you are learning much more than what you realize. Really. Uh, I mean, so many things you say, oh my God, it is so technical and I don't get it. And this is your self-talk to yourself, which constantly feels, oh, these are just details and why do I need to know this? Why can't I just know Brahman? So, these are all different ways that your mind resists learning. And what we actually need to do is really open that mind, and while you're resisting, your subconscious is absorbing. Because this is something that you have been searching for, not for one lifetime, over lifetimes. So therefore, it does something. It cannot keep you the same person anymore. It's impossible. While you're resisting, it's still entering, because this is what you need and you have needed for lifetimes. So therefore, as Tobias says, please don't also have this pressure of, yes, it's lovely to remember, but it's also important to recognize that what is going in has to also just transform you as a human being, right? So it's not something that you only intellectually understand, but also you have to begin to live it, you have to live differently. And so that means the whole learning is it's not only cognitive learning. And for that, where is Rudra? Rudra. Okay. He asked me a very, very good question yesterday. Rudra, I want you to ask me that question after the discussion. Yeah. Okay. Andrew, go ahead.
Okay.
So now, just I have one correction to make. The thing that you said about the apraptasya prapti, it is true that the karma kandas talk about it. It's true that all the prayers and all the rituals, which is meant for you to grow, but even Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita talk about it a lot, right? So it's not only the karma kanda, it is also the Upanishads that you will see. So much part will be in terms of who that person has to be. And Bhagavad Gita is full of different frameworks, right? So therefore, this part, yes, it's taken care of by Karma Kanda, but it's not the exclusive role of Karma Kanda. Even here, it is talked about. That's one correction. Okay.
You have to add even more. It's not just karmakanda. It's like the normal way people are living is apraptasya prapti. And we know how to get, let's say, good health. We know how to get a good salary, good education, enjoy ourselves and so on, without knowing anything about Veda. So apraptasya prapti is really the normal life. So it means that it's not just karmakanda.
No,
and not just Gita and Upanishad.
Yes.
It's everything. It's the usual approach to getting something that we don't have at present and use some means to get it. Only thing that Karma Kanda is adding, it gives us some more ends that we didn't know existed to us and more means to get this end. That's all.
Yeah. See, here the context was that who's a spiritual person? And for that spiritual person, there were two things. One is what? Self-growth, and the other one was self-inquiry. And self-growth fell in the category of what? Apraptasya prapti. And the self-inquiry is praptasya prapti. It's already accomplished, right? So how do you get self-growth? The self-growth, the karma kanda can help you. The Upanishads themselves talk about what self-growth is, right? How you need to prepare yourself. Then as Surya is saying, that your normal living also, sometimes even without the help of Vedas, you can prepare yourself, right? And this is what Rudra's question was. He will ask me later. But what is interesting is, suppose anything that you do, as we have seen in Apara Vidya, right? You have studied science. It has contributed to your self-growth, not in an emotional sense, but it has made your cognitive skills a little sharper. So that means this all of this, so that means when your cognitive skills are sharper, then you have a certain capacity to analyze, and that also helps, right? That is also because you're not just carried away by intuition. This intuitive feeling and intuition will tell me everything. This is so dangerous because you just kind of start thinking you're bigger than everybody else, right? And when you start thinking you as an individual is bigger than the Vedas and the whole big tradition, then you remain in your ignorance. Really. So this is why the mind so any emotional maturity that you have invested in, anything that you have done that is useful with or without the help of the Vedas. So that is, yeah. Is it clear? Yeah. Okay.
So that covers self-inquiry.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we moved on to mantra number 2.
Okay.
And mantra 2 point was we had a category of names. And these names were had a subtle message. And it started from Brahmaji, who is a symbol of Ishvara. And then Brahmaji told Atharva. Now Atharva is a symbol of a rishi. In the case that we used yesterday is like Isaac Newton, who happened to be sitting under a tree and observed a falling object being pulled down by a force. And he inquired, what is this force that pulls these objects down? So by that virtue, he was able to discern there is some force which we haven't inquired. So that means that ignorance cannot belong to Ishvara, it has to belong to the Jiva, because despite ignorance pertaining and sustaining itself, it doesn't mean that Ishvara didn't know, it just means that the Jiva didn't know about it. Okay.
Wow.
Now, Atharva obviously had to teach this knowledge onto his disciple, his or her disciple. Now, to do this, there's a certain methodology. And this methodology has a method to being passed on. So it's one thing to know something, but it's the other thing to pass it on in the right order without losing the context of the original message. Mantra 3 was when...
yeah, she has something to say.
I also wanted to mention that mantra 2 also has another subtle message, namely the timelessness of this teaching. And it also shows that this teaching is not of human mind. It comes from Ishvara. Just to supplement what you said.
Yes. So this teaching, as Ruxandra said, is what? It's timeless. There is no time that is, so these, immediately when I start teaching, people want to know these Upanishads, when were they written? And what is the date, right? So this is something which, this is a very kind of a scholarly view of the whole thing. And as Ruxandra said, that this knowledge is resting with Ishvara. It is all knowledge and all power has this knowledge. The ignorance doesn't belong to Ishvara and Ish. So therefore, this is something which is always there. And the first human being who removes that ignorance in any field is called Rishi, right? As he gave the example of Newton. Go ahead.
The knowledge is eternal.
Yes.
The teaching is knowledge. The teaching is made by humans, by the rishis or the teachers, isn't it?
Yeah. The rishis, yes, absolutely. But in this cycle, right, there is always somebody who knows this reality, and then that knowledge is passed on. So that means this knowledge, for example, when you ask about when the Vedas were written, way before they were written, it was an oral tradition. So this is why you can't give a date to it. So
I just wanted to make clear for myself.
Yes.
When you say the teaching comes from Ishvara,
yes.
that would mean Ishvara wants something, wants to teach us.
Okay.
You know?
So see, along with the universe, let me put it differently. Along with the universe comes the key to the universe. You see what I mean? If you were given the universe and you were not given the key, then what will happen is, it's very, very difficult. And that key to the universe, which is the truth of the universe, is there as a potential. And one person, because of one's preparedness, gets to know what that thing is. and then starts the whole tradition. So why we call it? Okay, that's a good question. So in any cycle of creation, there is always the first person who's a rishi who comes to know it. But what we say is that the universe and Ishvara is not just one cycle of creation. There are multiple, that is why, there are multiple cycles of creation, and in every creation this knowledge existed. That's why we don't give it a time to this knowledge.
You said the universe comes with the key.
Right? If it didn't come with the key, but the key is a potential, it's till somebody discovers it. You see what I mean? Yeah?
I think in this context we also talked about the importance of a teacher, because we cannot, understand the truth by ourselves, just by logic and reason. So for this, we need the teacher to teach us, or the Vedas, and then and the teaching methodology, of course, which is Vedanta.
Yes, exactly. So the second verse, yeah, please.
The question is the methodology. Does the rishis, did they realize? So is it a Voraussetzung, a condition to teach, to get it, so that they arrive moksha and then they can pass it on?
Okay. Very good. What all do you think? Very good question.
I think
And plus that the rishi has to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Be that he has the knowledge but not the capacity to teach.
So what we are studying are Upanishads, and embedded in the Upanishads is a rishi and the teaching, right? So maybe there are some teachers who didn't, rishis who didn't teach, but right now what we are studying is what all the rishis who taught and they passed on the knowledge. That's how we have this knowledge with us, right? So it's true that not everybody may have taught and written, but what we are studying is what somebody who has written and they have developed a methodology. Yeah? Yeah, Ruxandra.
no, regarding what
Yes.
what she said, what she asked earlier, I think you actually mentioned yesterday that someone who hasn't, you cannot get only a little bit of the truth. You either get the whole truth or nothing at all. So somebody that hasn't realized the truth cannot teach you the truth. He or she can take you up to a certain point, but then you have the Sudoku question. You cannot go further. So you have to go. I mean, I don't know if this answered your question, but this is how I see it.
Okay. So, anybody else wants to answer her question? It's a very good question. So, to answer, let me counter ask you a question. Is there only one methodology sorry, Stefan. Okay, thank you. Is there only one methodology which is developed and you just keep using this one methodology? No. As you will see, each Upanishad, they ask me very enthusiastically, what does this Upanishad is talking about? Same topic. Who you are, what is the nature of the universe, what is the nature of the cause of the universe. The topic doesn't change, but what changes is what? The methodology. What changes is the methodology. So Mundaka Upanishad, which is what you call Frog Upanishad, which I would not call Frog Upanishad. It is called what? It has a very important methodology. It uses the word Om to give the whole vision of what Vedanta is talking about. It's just brilliant. So that means that is one methodology which is used in Mundaka Upanishad. When you look at Katha Upanishad, it's a completely different methodology. When you look at Mundaka Upanishad, it's a different methodology. So and when you look at Gita, it's yet another methodology. So that means the methodologies, in fact there is a huge variety of methodologies, because what you have to learn is something which is complex and it's intricate and it's subtle. So that means, suppose you listen to this Upanishad and you think, oh, I know it. Now, when the other Upanishad presents it in slightly different way, your mind is, oh, this is what I'm used to. That is not understanding. Because if your mind has really understood, it can actually really appreciate that, hey, the same thing can be expressed in another way. And it can reconcile everything. Now, it also, if you have not understood, it's also an aid to understanding. Because I can present the same reality in some other way, and something that you missed out there, you may get it here. So that means the methodology itself has variety. Yeah? And this is why it's always interesting to listen to Upanishads, even though they're all indicating or showing the same thing. Because you can see the genius, where you can see, my God, you can have this complete methodology in one Upanishad and completely other methodology, but you come to the same truth. This is why, as I say, when you listen to Vedanta, you have to engage. Because in that methodology is not only your own clarity, but is a wow factor. Wow. No matter which way I look at the universe, and in how subtlety and reason after reason, I come to the same truth. It's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah? So therefore, these methodologies are different. And as yesterday, Matthias pointed out, these methodologies can also evolve over a period of time. As I told you, that in Chandogya Upanishad, as Carl had mentioned yesterday, the methodology that was used to show Satya-Mithya relationship was what? The clay and all the objects which are made from clay. Whereas right now, my teacher, Swamiji, used a methodology which is a quantum physics methodology, which is to show everything is atoms, atoms is nothing but particles, particles are nothing but... It's a different methodology, but it shows the same thing. Yeah? So that means methodologies can also evolve over a period of time. It's not that you only have to stick to the methodologies that are given in the Upanishads and Gita. But one condition that he used to keep reminding us, in your zeal to use different methodologies, don't change the message. As Andre was talking about. Because the minute you deviate from the tradition one, then it's like Sudoku that Rukshana was saying, and you start building on something which is a deviation, you build a totally different picture. Instead of world becoming Ishvara, world becomes illusion. Problem. Big problem. And when people start living thinking that the world is illusion, I'm living in an illusion, and they go crazy. So that means one deviation costs a lot. It costs so much in terms of from knowledge to some wacko thinking. Right? So that's why the commitment to teaching and to truth has to really be at the center. And one deviation, don't think of it as only as a detail. What difference does it make? It makes all the difference in the world. So that means this is why, while using your methodologies, you have to be very, very careful. And you have to be very sharp and alert. This is why sharpness and alertness in learning Vedanta is just of, it's so prime. So prime because the mind is very frivolous. It creates its own realities very quickly. And it tries to rest in one's created realities. And this is like a safe heaven that you have created for yourself. And this is why Andre's question of every day, ask yourself, not only, oh, I know this and I know this, what is exactly Upanishad trying to say? That's a nice starting point. Because your whole commitment then becomes trying to understand what something is saying rather than what I think. This I think is a very big, I mean what you think is important, but what I think becomes the driving force, your mind will take you off. So therefore, is it clear, Anya, the methodology? Yeah.
Yes.
So you can be creative, but don't deviate from what the messages are. And I think that's what also Andre was trying to say. Andre, did you say that?
That you can change the methodology
That
as
you-
long as it sticks to the same
As long as it-
conclusion.
Yes.
I just like the mathematical formula.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'm just thinking and asking you, would you agree that not just the different Vedic scripts are different methodologies, but also like different wisdom traditions, like are different methodologies, like the Bible or the Torah, and the wisdom that lies in that.
What is your answer to this question? Yeah, Toby.
It's a commonly made mistake, I would say. So it's what you're talking about is the philosophia perennis, like the universal philosophy, which could be like the core of any religion. For example, like the esoteric tradition in Christianity is like mysticism, or in like Islamic tradition it's Sufism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like it's spread all over the world. I don't know who spread it, but it's yeah, it's a myth. It's a myth. It's just a myth.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So.
Yeah. I just thought about it for many years, and from my personal opinion, it is just a myth. So it's a myth because religion is created to for a certain reason. Basically, just to simplify, to control people. Yeah, to somehow, and also to give them a possibility to organize themselves, whatever. You can see it from different perspectives. Religion is not a bad thing, but in the end, it's like it's a tool, yeah, to organize like many people.
Yeah.
So and then, but it doesn't mean that there's a truth there lays a truth like in the center of the religion. It could be like totally empty. For example, the Christian tradition is based on a story, basically. And if you reduce it to what is really actually in there, it's maybe 1% of the Bible could be like based on the teaching of Jesus. But the whole church, the whole religion is based on 99% of fiction. So, and I would say it's the same with any kind of religion. So there is a need for the people to know, but that doesn't mean that religion is based on this knowledge.
Okay. Sandra, Matthias, well, see, there are all these wonderful, nice debates. Yeah.
What I once learned from a Vedanta teacher was that there are certain texts really in other religions that do not contradict what is taught by Vedanta. And when they don't contradict Vedanta, you can say it is also Vedanta. Only the methodology is most of the time not available there. But I would say there are certain texts that do not contradict Vedanta, so in a way, I think you can. Yeah, well, the methodology most of the time is not there, so that is the biggest problem.
Matthias.
Yeah,
No, I would.
Sorry, Matthias, and then Timo. Yeah, Matthias raised his
No,
hand.
I would also say that it's a wrong notion that in the core of every religion is the same truth. I think this is a wrong notion. There are certainly certain aspects of wisdom in every religion, and we should appreciate this. But if you really want to understand the non-dual truth, you will not find it in the Bible. So That's and in most religious texts I know, you will not find it. So that makes the Upanishads special.
Timo.
One was the same. It's like because I always think that if truth is truth, then other people, it's not like it cannot be just in India, oh, they know the truth, everyone else is ignorant. So there has to be people everywhere that have seen the truth and that have expressed it. But of course, the part with the methodology and the development over 1,000 years and keeping it alive, that's maybe the thing that...
I would agree with Timur, and it's so true that, I mean, see, who am I? See, I'm a Vedanta teacher. It's not fair to ask me what does Bible say. I don't know, to tell you the truth, really. Right? And if you think that Bible has the same truth, I mean, you have freedom to go where you want to go, right? So the thing is, well, I'm teaching Vedanta, and I'm saying that Vedanta not only has the truth, but also has a very sophisticated and evolved methodology to make you see it as a fact. I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm not just asking you to say that, oh, because Upanishads are saying it, therefore you have to take it. There is so much time I spend in demonstration, right? So much time that I'm always like running short of time. Because my commitment is to really make you, if I may not be able to finish this text, or I may not be able to make you a person who knows the truth in 5 days, but I do want, my commitment is to make you a clear thinker. If you are a clear thinker, if you have the track of, then you don't start flying with imaginations. And that mind, which is not flying with imagination, is a huge asset. Then you are on the way. Otherwise, if my commitment is just to finishing this text, you continue to, no matter how clearly I explain something, you continue to fly with your own ideas. So therefore, it's very, very important that methodology and using the methodology for you to have precision in your thinking it's a stepping point on which you can build this vision of Vedanta oneness. You have to have precision. You can't just be vague about everything and say, oh, I know it. Just please have that much discrimination, that much discerning power. So therefore, the thing is that I am committed to teaching Vedanta. And Vedanta is one which has a very sophisticated methodology. Now, if you think I don't know about other things, because I haven't studied them, I don't know what they are talking about. And if you think, if you feel that others also have that, it's your responsibility to explore and see what you find. I don't know. Right? And as Tibor says that, yeah, maybe there are other traditions, the truth is available, but the question then is, what is the nature of methodology? Is it able to take you from one point to the other? I mean, many people can make the statement that yes, all that is here is one. Oneness is probably intuitively known by many, many people, but then if you begin to ask them questions, know. And because they don't know, they say, oh, the mind is only a rational mind, it will not get you there. So get rid of this mind and then you experience. See, unfortunately, when they are incapable of answering certain questions, they create their own way which takes you off. Takes you off from the truth, unfortunately. Right? Because they have no answers, but they can't appear as not having answers, then they completely deviate from the tradition. And it puts you in a mindset which is so away from what is required for knowing the truth. That is a little bit of a danger. So is it okay? I mean, I think you outside this classroom are free to explore what you want. I'm not here a missionary telling you only Vedanta has truth. We've come here to study Vedanta. My job is to teach Vedanta and use the methodology to make you see something. If you think somebody else also has the same capability, you can always go there. I have no problem with that. Yeah? Okay, and I'm not well equipped to answer that question because I haven't studied anything else. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Is it satisfying? Okay. Carl, you had
All
a
right,
question?
you have answered it, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let's move on now. Okay, now I think the whole class time is going. So let us a little bit move on a little bit. Okay, otherwise the whole time will go. So good for participation, just the glimpses. We can continue. Now, the question is, when we left off yesterday, the question was asked by this, Shaunaka to Angiras, and that is what, concerning one thing, everything else is known. And what we did yesterday was only kind of established the possibility that by knowing one thing, everything is known. And which is the example, through which example we established the possibility? Gold and all the ornaments. Right? So that's the methodology that we use to show that yes, there is a possibility that by knowing gold, the entire ornament world of the past, of the present and the future can be known without knowing the details, because all that is here is really only the gold. The modifications actually don't really add anything or really don't subtract anything. That's why. Yeah? So this is why now we need to find for that doesn't automatically establish the fact that all that is here is one. Right? So now what we need to do is find equivalent of gold in this example with reference to the universe. Do you understand? See the methodology. Yeah? So now, what is the equivalent of gold in this universe, knowing which everything else, all the different names and forms that constitute the universe will be known. So now, what we need to do, replace this gold with what? Yeah. Okay. Replace this gold with, then there are gold and then the ornaments, right? In the example. Now we need to use this example to arrive at the truth of the universe. So what do ornaments represent in this world? All the forms. Wonderful. Plus, forms, yes. Plus?
Objects in general.
Yeah, so objects in general include forms.
Attributes.
Yes, their functions, maybe.
Or the attributes.
Vikaras, changing, modifiers.
Huh?
Vikara.
All the changing, yeah. So the changes.
The attributes.
But also
the attributes.
the knowledge.
Attributes. Plus.
Laws.
Huh?
The laws.
The laws. Very good. Then?
Body, mind, intellect.
Body, mind, intellect. Okay, mind, within mind is intellect, and then there are other functions in the mind. Okay, you can put it, but yeah. Okay.
Words.
Huh?
Language, words.
Language. Okay, it's endless. so let's not, good, you're very creative. But two essential things are remaining here.
Perceptive. It's everything perceptive.
Yeah, all this, huh?
Consciousness of conscious.
Yeah, these are all kind of different functions of the mind which we will see little bit later.
Vidya, knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah. So knowledge which is like given within the possibility here, and yeah. So all kinds of apara vidya is also here, right? Within the universe there is all these possibilities of knowing physics and knowing biology and knowing economics and all these possibilities of knowledge, right? What two essential things are still
They are
remaining?
all in time and space.
Excellent. Right. That was our so okay. So time and space. Right? Everything that we see here, all of this, they all exist within time and space. So that means the equivalent of ornament here is what you need to figure out. What? Everything. And the equivalent of gold is what? What?
Consciousness.
Wow. Okay, so you already have an answer, which is true. It's the truth. This is how. Now, what Rudra is saying is, it is consciousness. The equivalent of gold is consciousness, and the equivalent of ornament is what? Time, space, forms, their functions, the changing attributes, changes the attributes, the laws, the body, the mind, the intellect, language, knowledge, possibility of knowledge, which is aparavidya. The whole thing is equivalent to ornament. So and time and space, the whole thing has to collapse into what? Consciousness. For this, by knowing this, everything is as well known. Do you understand that? Do you see the progression of logical thinking? Now, how you can't just say how are now Upanishads taking you from this, right, to this, and what is the methodology used? Yeah, is it clear? Now, so let's read the next verse. It shows you what this reality is. Okay. Yat tat adrishyam, agrahyam, agotram, avarnam. So let's put achakuru shotram yat apanipadam nityam vibhu sarvagatam susukshmam tat avyayam yat bhutayonim paripashyanti dhiraha. So very nice. The dhiraha, right? Dhiraha are who the wise people, paripashyanti. They, pashyati is what? Pashyanti is a verb which means they see. Paripashyanti, it's a kind of a prefix added, so that means see very clearly. They don't just have vague idea about it, they see it very clearly. So what do they see? This equivalent of goal, which is consciousness. Now, the next question is, where will I find consciousness? Right? So therefore, here he says, this consciousness, which is the truth of the whole ornament, equivalent to ornament, which includes the jagat, is itself adrishyam. What is adrishyam?
Unseen.
Excellent. It is something which unseen. What it means is that it is something when you are using your eyes, you only can see what? Forms. Exactly. You only can see the objects. So that means if you begin to see the consciousness, it will become what? Right? So therefore, it is something which is unseen. It is agrahyam. What does grahyam mean?
Unborn?
No, agrahyam means okay. It's not within the organs of action. So that means, suppose I can say, I can grab this glass with my hand, right? So can you catch the consciousness with your hand? There was a soccer match, can you kick the consciousness with your hand? Right? So that means it is not something which is available here. It is what unseen means. It is not available not only for your eyes but for any sense organs. And that includes what? Not only eyes, it includes ears, it includes smell, taste and touch, right? So that means you can't say, oh, I will, this is why, Stefan, you cannot say that, oh, using my normal means of knowledge, I found consciousness. So that means, otherwise you'll have to say, oh, I saw it yesterday. Or I heard consciousness noise when I was swimming in the lake, right? You can't say that, right? Or I touched it yesterday. Or I tasted it, I will taste it tomorrow, right? So, and I'll smell it. So that means it's something which is not available to you through your what? Sense organs. Yes?
And what about the intuition?
Yeah.
Is it an attribute of the mind or sense?
Yeah, it is the attribute of the mind. Now, intuition. Can you get to know yourself or equivalent of gold through intuition?
No.
No. Why not?
Maybe.
Huh?
Maybe.
For sure. Because intuition is known to the subject.
See, one thing, Clementina, we need to understand. First, in order to answer this question, this is a very, very common question, right? So everybody thinks as though, oh, just intuitively I know it because it's my nature. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Why? I have to give you an answer why not. Right? So the function of, see, where does intuition come? So first of all, what is an intuition? Suppose, can you give me an example of intuition?
For example, the football game championship, I have the intuition that Spain will win in the beginning.
And will it win or not?
They will win. No, they didn't.
Oh, they
I bet on it, but they didn't.
So that means, see, so it's interesting. And why does, now it's interesting, let's first understand once and for all what intuition means so that we never have questions about can Atma be known through intuition. It's a very important question and it's a very, very common question. Yeah. So now we need to explore a little bit further and we need to ask Tobia, why don't you call it knowledge and why did you call it intuition?
Because it was like there was no like certain result, it was like not clear what will be the outcome. No.
But there is an intuition about the future and also about the present. I mean, this is a kind of prediction, but there is also intuition for some other things.
Yeah. So exactly. Yes. There are so many different scenarios of intuition. Now what I want you to get to is, I can't examine all the different scenarios of intuition, but I have to make you see what is intuition in general, which then can apply to every scenario, right? So let's just take Tobia as an example, but it doesn't mean it is restricted to that. What you're saying is absolutely right, that it can also happen with, intuition can also mean, oh, I see you and I say, oh yeah, she must be like an economist, right? So that means you haven't yet told me who you are, but kind of I intuitively figured it out, and this is what also it can be referring to the present. Yeah, so we see something and then what we have certain knowledge about that thing without actually engaging in the formal process of knowing. That's called intuition. Do you understand that? First you need to define, see everything that you are talking about, most of the time you yourself don't know what you are talking about. So you need to know what we are talking about, right? So that means what is intuition? So the intuition by definition is, okay, the mind, whether it is as Clementina is saying, seeing the present or as Tobias was saying, predicting about the future. So normally the mind uses which two methods? Perception and inference. These are the two methods that the mind normally uses to know things, right? Now, what is called intuition? Where does intuition fit in here? The intuition fits in here is that when you see a situation and you just have a little perception and without, look at this, without engaging in a formal process of inference which requires reasoning and some deduction and some analysis, you come to a conclusion. Yeah? So that is what we call intuition. Without engaging this conscious process of inference which requires certain analysis, certain use of logic, you have arrived at this particular thing. Now, because you have not used this normal process, there is a possibility, as Tobias is saying, even your inference can go wrong, by the way, because your reasoning may not work, right? But here, just as even your inference cannot go wrong, you have not even used this process and you have produced, your mind has produced some information about that given thing, it may or may not be right. You understand? Like how he predicted about Spain winning, which was with reference to the future, and it may not be what is right. Suppose I meet Gabby and I predict that she is an economist. She may or may not be. There is not like always it is right. Because there is no formal process which is used to arrive at this may or may not be right. So this cannot become a means for knowledge, because here it can produce sometimes about accurate information, sometimes not so accurate. So you can't rely on it. You can't say it's my intuition, therefore it is right, because it doesn't meet all the necessary conditions for knowledge. Now, the second thing is you need to ask yourself, how did the mind get the capability of arriving at this without going through this normal thought processes which are generally employed?
Based on information that we picked up all the time.
Excellent. So that means, what happens is, many kind of past conditions, as Sterling is explaining, right, that certain associations that the mind has made, right? So many times we, suppose you see somebody who is, I don't know, let's say from Spain, and you think, oh, that person is fun-loving, right? And why? So why did this, you just met this person, right? And your mind says, oh, that person is fun-loving, because what he's saying is, maybe not very consciously through this whole thing, what at that time you're saying, oh, I have met 10 more people earlier and they were fun-loving, so therefore there is a probability that, 1% probability that she is also fun-loving. Without going through this inference, it just produces this knowledge. You understand? Through past association of certain, this means this, right? So this is how the intuition takes place, which is somehow you are connecting some data from the past, but not very consciously. You are not consciously producing this information through a formal process. Yeah? Now, what also, now, sometimes your mind is pretty sharp, so it can put the past things together to give you the right input also. It's not that always intuition is wrong. Yeah? Sometimes it gives you are pretty smart, your mind is good at kind of the past association and putting it together to assess but here there is no guarantee that it gives the right data or not right data. This is a normal intuition of normal people. Okay? Now, I have to, as you begin in your journey of Vedanta, yeah, what happens is that the mind becomes clearer and clearer. And then what happens is connection with Ishvara gets more and more. And sometimes, and it is not a necessary condition, it's not like that has to happen before the knowledge takes place, it's really not related to it. Sometimes your mind is able to, because all that is here is one intelligence. So sometimes your mind, sometimes, not always, right, is able to get information from this Ishvara's knowledge without, which is, you know, a kind of a transfer because of your connection. That source of intuition is not just this mental process of processing information based on past experiences, it comes because of your connection. Now, sometimes there are also in yoga, some siddhis are being talked about. So whether you know the reality or not, there are some people who become clairvoyant, right? So you'll find people who claim to be clairvoyant, they are able to see certain things in the future and things like that. So there are some techniques, because the mind that we have is capable of doing a lot more than what we use it for. So therefore, you can actually develop some of these skills that are there as a potential. So when Surya recently, we went to see the astrologer and they said, oh, Surya can do marma. What is this marma? Marma is all these very intricate nerves which are all in the body and they are all connected, and he can actually, but it is only remains as a potential, because it's not something that he would like to engage in. So that means these potentials can be developed if one wants to, right? So there are so many capabilities, even, and it has got nothing to do with knowledge of this goal. It's all about the world, having some information about the world, of the future events, what is going to happen, that you have access to, which others don't have access to.
So it's always media?
It is all within this. It is all within this. So don't make something, and it's true that it is there, you can wisely use it, right? Don't deny there is a capability in the mind, but you also have to be careful with it. Because you can't just, you know, oh, I'm connected to Ishvara, so everything that happens to me, it's all just, don't get into these fantasies, right? These fantasies are useless. Or to think that, oh, you know, and or the whole life becomes connected, devoted to, oh, let me find out what the future is, you know, and that, or let me develop my intuition so that it's all about here. Within this world, when you can do something little more than what these five senses are able to do. You increase your range a little bit more. For everybody else, it's a wonder, but it's just nothing. It's like developing your muscle. You go to the gym every day. Your muscle is a little bit more developed than anybody else. Same, right? So therefore, we are not trying to, and unfortunately, that becomes a huge distraction.
Yeah. Side effect.
Yeah.
For example, if you're more sensitive to like informations and other people, and you're like among other people, you get much more information. It's like an overload, and you get distracted and stuff like that.
Exactly. So for doing this, I will just give you, to lighten up, I will give you an example. This is a real life example. So what happened is, the first time I met Swamiji, so I was a young girl, and I was a little shy of going and seeing him, so his personal assistant said, he wants to see you. So I was like, oh, he wants to see me? Okay, great. So then I went to see him, and the first thing when he looked at me, he says, are you from Bombay? And that was in New York, in the Sailor's World Ashram in Pennsylvania, right? So so I said yes, and this is the truth, because there is Srinivas who was there, I mean somebody from Swamiji's village who is a good friend of ours, and he knows this story really well. So then he says, okay, are you Gujarati? I said, yes. And I saw him for the first time in my life. Nobody had given him this information, right? Then, even more interestingly, he says a specific place in Bombay where I live. So, are you from Vileparle? I said, yes. And by then, my mind, I was just so new to Vedanta, I was all imagining he's God and he has all information and he just knows everything about everything. And you know how my mind started just flying because he just asked me these 3 questions, right? So there, I was like totally floored, right, when he asked me these questions, and then I was just chatting with him. When I came out, the first person I met was this Srinivas, who is from Swamiji's village. He's from that village, and he also was there in Sailorsburg. And I said, Srinivas, Swamiji knows everything about everything. And Srinivas put my whole bubble into burst. He says, you know what, he meets so many people, he can infer this easily. Right? So that means, not a big deal, right? I was like, oh, right? So that's why what happens is that you become slightly, the process, the mind becomes sharper, its processing abilities become a little bit better. So your intuition also can grow a little bit, and your connection to Ishvara can also sometimes give you access to some information. But the reality is that that's really not the primary means. Don't confuse it with the primary means of knowledge. The understanding the truth of the whole universe is another ball game, for which you really need to understand that, hey, where did this whole universe come from? Your intuition cannot provide that answer. Where did time and space come from? Where did all these individuals come from? Right? How are they all organized in a way that they are organized? And what am I supposed to get from, this essential question, okay, why am I here on this earth, doing what? Right? And then all these answers, there is no intuition which can come up with. This is why we talk about knowledge. And knowledge always rests on Ishvara. And the person who discovers this knowledge develops a sophisticated methodology to pass it on. Because knowledge, as we saw, is what? Vastu Tantra. Vastu Tantra means what? Keep coming back to the definitions. What is Vastu Tantra?
Knowing things as they are, not as you want them to be.
Exactly. So that means that the knowledge is Vastu Tantra, as Ruksandra is saying, that it is centered on what is. What is the real nature of this consciousness. It has got nothing to do with what we imagine. So this, in your imagination, you want consciousness to be benevolent. It doesn't happen. It has got nothing to do with you. You would like for it to be benevolent and give you knowledge tomorrow. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Then what happens? Oh, consciousness is mean. like how Tobias said, right? Somebody looked into whole of Upanishad. Schopenhauer. Oh, he's such a famous. Yeah, Schopenhauer looked into and he concluded, oh, this consciousness is so mean, it's creating violence, war, this, that. It's not at all benevolent, it's an evil force. Can you imagine? So that means you can imagine what you want about it, this remains unaffected. It doesn't depend upon what you think for it to be what it is. This is why your commitment is not to what you think. Your commitment is to understanding clearly what is. This is why you have to use your mind wisely. And this is why the prayers start by saying, hey, give me this capacity, let me hear properly, let me understand things properly, give me a healthy body. I need the blessings of all these different devas for that, so that I can learn this truth clearly.
So is it empirical when
so this happens in the empirical world.
Yeah. So when I try to live using empirical knowledge, that makes me that's why I become free, because I'm not doing my own thing. So it's a strange thing, because I'm free by not doing my own imaginings.
Yes. So this is why the first condition for Vedanta is to reduce your subjectivities. It's so important. And to begin to see the world as it is, because only then you can move one step forward. Yes. Okay. Now, let's come back. Agrahyam is not something which can be grasped. Then, what is the other thing? It is agotra. Agotra means it's interesting in India, whenever you go to a temple, they'll ask you your gotra. So what is this gotra? It means that each of us is supposed to have an origin of a rishi. So there are multiple rishis, many people who saw it, and then what? So which rishi's lineage are you? It's interesting, right? So therefore this is called, so that means in order for you to belong to any rishi, you have to be born. This is agotra. What does it mean? That it is unborn. Okay. Then it is avarna. Avarna means without avarna. Avarna means without any attributes. Then tat achakshuhu itself does not have eyes. Not only, look at this, adrishyam is what? That I cannot see it. Look at the difference. Achakshuhu means what? Consciousness doesn't have eyes. Do you see the difference? Consciousness itself, it is without eyes. It is without ears. Itself is without any what? Tat apanipadam. Without any hands and legs. Do you understand the difference between adrishyam and agrahyam and apanipadam and do you understand? Achakshuhu, ashotram. This is something which is referring to I cannot see consciousness. This refers to consciousness itself as what? No eyes, no ears, no hands, no legs. Yeah? Nityam. What is Nityam? That which is, now we'll have to analyze some of these terms. First let's see those terms, then we will analyze it. Okay? Nityam. What is Nityam? Nityam means what? In here the translation is what? Eternal? Yeah, eternal. So what is the meaning of the word eternal? It means, what do you think is the meaning of eternal?
Not bound to time.
Excellent. The meaning of eternal is something which is not bound or subject to time. So that means this time is within this. So this consciousness that we are talking about is not subject to time, not bound by time. Okay? So Nityam is not bound by time. Okay? Vibhum. What is Vibhum here? That which becomes many. So that means Vibhum. Where is the next? Okay, Vibhum. Which becomes many. Like the gold becomes many ornaments. Do you understand? which becomes many. Sarvagatam. Sarvagatam. It is what?
All pervasive.
All pervasive. Like the gold is all pervasive with reference to what? The ornament world. Right? In every ornament you will find the gold. So that is all pervasive. Then susukshma. What is it? So it is itself what? Very subtle. Susukshma. Okay.
When you say subtle, doesn't it make it a material? Or?
Yeah, okay, great. So that means all this requires an explanation, right? Yeah, so Stefan's question is, within this world itself, there are some gross things and there are some subtle things, right? So what is a subtle thing? What is a gross things in this world? Tell me.
Body.
The body is gross. What is subtle in this world?
Mind.
Mind, right? So that means, right? So this is why what is written is very interesting, that Sukshmam is subtle. Here it is what? A prefix is added, Susukshmam, to distinguish it from the subtleness of things that you see in this world. Do you understand? This is how knowing Sanskrit is very important, because the way you play with the words and the meaning, and just by adding these prefixes, you actually distinguish things. Yeah? But what exactly is meant, that we will see. Okay? Let's first get the meaning, then we'll see the meaning of the whole verse. Okay? So Sukshmam, and the final thing is what? Avyaya. The final thing is Avyaya, which does not undergo any change. Wow, this is all the description of gold equivalent consciousness. Right? So now, we really need to spend time, and we can't just say, okay, now next verse. We need to actually understand what all this, how do you reconcile all this and what it means, right? So therefore, one thing. Now, paripashyanti dhiraha. The wise people, what? They see it. Paripashyanti means they see it. But here again, you can say the word seen, which will mean what? That it's an object. See, any word that you use, you will fall into this trap. Why? Because the whole language, as you all have very beautifully pointed out, is within what? Mithya word. Because we have created language for what? Things that we see and things that we understand. And what we are capable of understanding is also only given, as we saw, with perception and inference. What we can know is about this. So our whole language is confined to the Mithya world. Now, if I use some other language, then if I say Atma is, Swamiji used to always make fun, Gagamuga. Okay, I'll use the word which doesn't exist in the empirical world, but what will it convey to you? Nothing. So that means I am constrained to use the language that you know. But the language itself has a limitation, because the language itself is talking about things that we can know, and it refers to this Mithya world. Now, how can I use the language which has limitation to point something which is what? Limitless. Huh? Not inference. No. So that is what we call, these prakriyas include using the words that you are obliged to use, but take out their direct meaning and show their implied meaning. Stefan asked this question yesterday, right? So I'm just looking at Stefan to answer the question. So what it means is, every word is a limited word, right? And you're constrained to use this word. So in the tradition, what we say is, the word, any word, which in Sanskrit means shabda. See, when that intricacy comes, I love to use Sanskrit because it is shown in Sanskrit, right? Shabda has two ways the words are used. One is what we call vachyartha, which is vachyartha. Okay. And the other is what we call lakshyartha. What it means is, this is the direct meaning of the word, and this is what we call the implied meaning of the word. So therefore, what the Vedanta methodology involves is to use the word, but to take out the direct meaning and use it to convey what you want to convey through those words. So that's why the usage of words in Vedanta is critical. Because if you don't use the words accurately, it can create a completely different meaning. Do you understand? That's why the competency of teacher is critical to communicate what needs to be understood. You have to use not only the words and use them correctly, but you have to take the person from the direct meaning of the word to the implied meaning of the word, which represents the reality.
Is this the way of the negation? Because the first things all are, it is not like this, it is not like this here, it is not, you cannot see it, it is not hearable, it's not, in this way we taking out the direct meaning.
In fact, actually, I will slightly put it slightly differently. What I would say is, suppose the word, let's use the word consciousness, right? The word consciousness, as it is used in common parlance, what does it mean?
Normal speech.
Consciousness. Consciousness, what does it mean?
Like a state.
Awareness.
I'm conscious of
something.
something, right? So it is used normally as one function of the mind. He's conscious, he's unconscious. What does it refer to? Huh? One state of the mind, right? So that means, so then he says, we also say, oh, he's very conscious of ecological issues. How is it used, that word consciousness? Conscious attribute, right? So that means, this is what we call, when I use the word consciousness, the first meaning it will create for you is consciousness of something which belongs to the mind. Do you understand? Because this is how we are used to thinking. Do you understand? So, but I'm constrained to use some word, but after having used this word, I have to use another methodology to say, hey, I'm talking about consciousness, but not your meaning of consciousness. In fact, what I mean is something little different. Do you understand? And I have to show you that when I talk about consciousness, I'm not talking about the consciousness which belongs to, which is one of the attributes of your mind. It is something that even when the mind resolves in the deep sleep, then consciousness is there. You see what I mean? I have taken you from vachyartha to lakshyartha. What is intended to be conveyed by the tradition.
Is that also the case in Sanskrit words? Like, do you have one word for the same Sanskrit word for two meanings, or does Sanskrit
No, because even Sanskrit is actually within empirical world, no? Sanskrit also belongs to empirical world. So that's why Sanskrit also has this. Any language, any word is only with reference to, limited reality. Yeah? So that's why, that's why we have all these words. And the methodology when a teacher teaches or Adi Shankaracharya teaches that in Taittiriya Upanishad, this is in detail explained how the words are used, right, to convey, because somebody can ask the question, every word is limited, how can it convey something which is limitless? Logical question. If you don't understand all these intricacies, you don't know how to answer that question. Do you understand that? This is why knowing is it is intricate. I keep saying it's subtle, because it requires beyond, we think we understand, but actually there is a lot more understanding before you can call it understanding. Uta, and then Uta.
Okay. When I was in the 3-month course with Swamiji, I asked him only one question because I was not so close to him. And the one question was, if Brahman is without attributes, it's Nirgun Brahman.
Yes.
How can you say it's Sat or Chit or Ananda? And he said, it is not Sat, Chit, Ananda. These are just hints to what it is. And I understood that, well, not really. But now I understand what he meant. This is exactly what he was talking about.
Yes.
Mm.
So many things she's telling me. She listens to Swamiji's 3-month course and she's saying, so many things are clicking now that I'm bigger. This is what he meant. This is what he meant. This is what he meant. This is wonderful, Yute. I'm so happy. You cannot imagine how happy I am. Yeah. Really. Exactly. Because what he says comes from all his knowledge. Yeah, he comes from here. Okay? Yeah, Yuta.
I want to ask about Sanskrit. Sanskrit is used for making the words more and more clear.
Yes, yes.
And I have heard, this is my question, that in Sanskrit there is no I. That the sentence I may be used. Is it true? Aham is I. Because I have heard it from Buddhists that they don't use the I.
No. See, this is one big difference, which is a very big difference. And now that the Yuta is explaining it, I'm way over time. Okay, just 2 minutes. Okay. Because Surya says, do your own job of looking at So I'm looking at time, Surya, and I do recognize I'm 15 minutes over. But just one thing. Please, when you come to Vedanta, don't start using the body came to verbalency. Not needed. Because I understand consciousness doesn't move, so the body came to verbalency. You don't need to use this. We have in Sanskrit a wonderful word called aham. You don't have to hesitate to use it, right? I came, use it, wonderful, right? As long as you understand, right? Or this jiva has taken the form of, you ask, what's your name? This jiva has taken in this body and mind the name of Andre. You don't need to say that. No, I'm not talking to you. I've taken the name of Neema. All this makes you pseudo, right? So that means as long as you understand that this aham refers to one of the functions of the mind, there is no problem. You understand? You just understand. It's not a matter of changing your whole big vocabulary and showing to the world that, oh, you're Atma and you're not this body. Please don't do that. Yeah? So therefore, this is all, what I say is, these are all gimmicks. So therefore, you just want to be a healthy, connected, clear human being who understands what is this and what is this. That's all. Make it simple, right? So therefore, this is what we say, that these words, we don't have any problem with using the word aham. As long as you understand, in a common parlance, we use the word aham with its vachyartha. And what is the direct meaning of aham? This little individual body and mind. That's all, right? That's a common usage of the word aham. What Vedanta is trying to show you is, this is not what it means, which is the real nature of I. This is what it means. That's all. Right? So therefore, this is what we call, this is the intended meaning that I'm trying to, or any teacher is trying to convey to you. Right? We are not shy of using the word I. Okay.
Yeah, just to make it for me clear, my question was to come to this implied meaning
Yes.
through negation. Because often it said neti, and I just thought, even when you are explaining consciousness, it's not a state of mind, it's not an attribute.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
right like this.
So, but at the same time, yes, you have to say it is none of this. Please don't take this consciousness. Exactly. So let's use what Carl is saying, and that this consciousness, if you're trying to see it, it's not available for seeing, right? This, if you're trying to grab it, it's not available for grabbing it. If you're trying to, exactly, so what, right? So that means the consciousness, the way we understand it, is born with the mind. It is something that I can recognize, that I'm conscious of environment. So all these different notions that we have, it has to negate. Yeah? But then it's not only negation.
No.
It also then has to show, if these are all what we call, this operation that we do is calling negation of your vachyartha, your direct meaning. After that, the teaching also has to give you lakshyartha. It has to tell you then what it is. It's not enough to make you see. This is like what somebody was saying, Krishnamurti, that he negates everything, then finally you're left with nothing. Or maybe some Buddhists do that also, right? So that means one process of it involves what? Negation, because these are referring to the direct meaning, but the other process refers to lakshyartha. If this is all not what it is, then what it is. Yeah? And that is the definition of what Ute said, Swamiji said, it's Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. These are not what we call attributes of one object called Brahman. These are the defining words, they are leading words which make you see yourself in its true light. Yeah?
All pervasive is not negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, this is one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
This is showing how it is.
right. Now, see, use every word, right? As Gabby says. See, this is a training. All pervasive. Okay, way over time. All pervasive may give the feeling that what? It is all pervasive within time and space. So that means even all pervasive gives a limited meaning. So you need to take it out. You see what I mean? No matter which word you use, it has vachyartha. It has a limited meaning. And you need to, whether you use a positive word or a negative word, doesn't matter. It has a certain limited connotation. Even consciousness is not a negative word, right? And you have to take out the direct meaning and you have to use, the teacher has to make you see the implied meaning. Is it clear? Okay. Now we will further talk about this consciousness, which is not available for all of this, then what it is and where you can find it. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate